Alright, so in this video, I'll be showing you how to add materials to your objects in Blender. This is a fairly straightforward process, so we can start by going to our Properties panel on the right hand side here, and going down to this red icon, which is our Material Properties panel. I'll left click, and you'll see that we already have a material added to our cube, creatively named Material. If we want, we can change the name by left clicking on this box and renaming it to something like Tammy's Material. You can rename it whatever you want, of course. So in this top section here, we have a few icons. The plus and minus button is to add or remove materials from our object. So if I click on the minus key, our material has been removed from our cube. However, this does not mean that our material has been deleted. It just means that our material is no longer assigned to the cube. To reassign it to the cube, all we need to do is click on this icon here, and you'll see that our material is found in this menu. The 0 next to the material name means that there's no objects in this Blender file with this material assigned. So I'll make sure to add it once more. And we have our material assigned to the cube once again. If we want, we can press this plus button here and click on new to add in a new material. And its default name will be material. For now, since we don't need two materials to our cube, I can get rid of this extra material by pressing the minus icon. So if we go down to preview, this is a preview of what our material looks like on different objects. Right now it's set to the sphere, and we have this very basic white looking material. If you want to change the object of preview, feel free to select different objects from this list here. Going down to the surface menu, we have this use nodes button. In Blender, if you see any icon that is highlighted blue, this means that it's already being selected. As you can see in our material preview mode, we have the sphere being selected. In our outliner menu, we have the cube being selected. As you can see all across Blender, blue is to signify that that option is being selected. So right now we are currently using nodes, and the node that we're using is the principled BSDF. The principled BSDF is a very important node, which will get its own separate video, so I won't go too in depth into all of the little features of this amazing node. So we can scroll down past all of these features, then we will arrive at volume. Volume is used to add volumetrics to our material. This is typically used for clouds or fog in our scenes. However, it's something that's not often used for regular materials. In settings, we have different settings for how light interacts with our materials, such as the blend mode, the shadow mode, and how light refracts off of the surface of our material. And for the rest of the material properties, we don't need to worry about for now, as they are more advanced features for our materials. So if we want to customize our material some more, we can scroll back up and change the base color of our material. So if I left click on this white section here, you can see that a color wheel has been brought up. We have different modes of selecting our color. We can either drag our color wheel, and that will change the color, as you can see in this little material preview mode here. As I like blue, I'm going to drag it to the top and select this lovely blue color. If you want, you can also play around with the RGB sliders, and the A stands for alpha, but this is not going to be applicable right now. We also have hue saturation values, another alternative way of being more systematic in your material picking approach. So as you can see, we can play around with these values like so. And then we have hex codes, which you can copy and paste if you have a very specific color that you want to use. So I'll click off this panel here. You can see that in our preview mode, we have this blue color showing. However, in our 3D viewport, that's not the case. This is because we're not in the correct shading mode to view our materials. In Blender, there are 4 different shader modes. The first one is the one you see here, which is the solid shading mode. This defaults all of the objects to gray, and there's no light interactions or any render properties that you've enabled. If we go to the top here, you can see the 4 different options, which are laid out here. So the first one is X-ray mode. As you can see, all of our faces are invisible, and we have more of a skeleton of our objects. So if I add in a monkey by pressing Shift A and add in the monkey, you can see once again that there's no faces in between, and we can kind of see through our entire object. This is extremely useful for edit mode. However, it's not very useful right now. So I'll just delete the monkey like so. The second one is of course the solid mode, which we've already seen before. The more interesting ones are the ones that we haven't viewed yet. So if we go to the top and click on the third one, which is viewport shading mode, now we can finally see our material. Now, if we make any changes to our material, we'll be able to see it in real time. So if I bring up the metallic, you can see that our cube is already being affected by the changes that we've made. The last shader mode is rendered view. In rendered view, this also takes into account light properties, such as the lights that you'll be adding in your scene. So if I press Shift A and add in a light and a area light, you can see the effects that it's already having on our viewport mode in our 3D viewport. But if I go back to material preview mode, there's no difference. So that's the difference between material preview and rendered mode. Anyway, we got a little off track. For our materials property, we can finally make use of the shading tab up here. So if we switch from layout to shading mode by left clicking up here, we're in a completely different workspace. Some new windows that we have here are the File Explorer and the UV Editor, which we will be talking about in a later video. However, the most important feature of this workspace is our shader editor. So as you can see, these are the nodes that I previously mentioned before. Nodes are essentially the building blocks of our shader. So if we string multiple nodes together, we can get very complex and realistic looking materials. So if we string enough of them together, we can get very complex and realistic looking materials. But right now we have the principal BSDF node plugged into the material output node. If you don't have anything plugged into your material output node, then there will be no material and you'll just get a black object despite all of the nodes before it. So make sure to always have something plugged into your material output node. Once again, we'll cover the principal DF node in its own video. However, it's good to note that in our principal BSDF node, we have a few things that we can play around with, such as the metallic, roughness, transmission, emission, and normal modes. Anyway, going back to our layout mode, we can also add in our shader editor if we don't want to go to our shading tab by dragging up on our timeline and clicking on this menu and changing it from timeline to shader editor. Now we've got the exact same shader editor as seen before in the shading tab. Alright, so I think that's it for the basics of materials in Blender. In the next video, I will be showing you a more in-depth look on the principal BSDF node. See you in the next video.